Be yourself. Expect complaints. That's the slogan I want to talk about in this video. The first part of it, be yourself, we hear it so often. It's a cliche aphorism. It hardly captures much of our attention, I think. The second part, expect complaints, perhaps is not considered enough. And I want to spend some time focusing on that part also in this video. But first, my name is Michael Dewan-Herrick. I'm the creator of the online store called Attention Bazaar. You can find a description of the store and a link below. I invite you to come and visit and check it out. Okay, let's tackle the first part. Be yourself. The cliche. First thing I want to say about that is that it's not obvious, is it? It's difficult to know who we are. It takes effort. It takes a long path of self-reflection and inquiry to know who we are. We have to ask ourselves a lot of questions and ponder what the answers might be. What do we really care about? What do we love? What are our values? What do we abhor? What disgusts us? What are our limitations? And what are our flaws and dark sides? What do we want to do in our lives? How do we want to live? There's an endless number of questions that we can ask. I've just gotten a bit started. Perhaps you can fill in the blank and come up with some of your own questions. But really, before we can be ourselves, we have to have some sense of what ourselves is. And the other thing about this is that it's not just a thing that we are, it's a thing that we're becoming. It's a moving target. And part of it is what's innately in us, but another part of it is what we create, how we decide to be. That's also who we are. And if we're going to be ourselves, it's going to be important to know as much as we can about ourselves. It's probably never too early to be ourselves. We all know something of ourselves, and we can express that and be that in the world. But there's probably a threshold where we know ourselves well enough to really set out on that path in a serious way. So the first difficulty is knowing ourselves. The next difficulty, of course, is our fear about what other people think, how other people will react. If we say or do something that's true to ourselves in the context of people who may want something else from us, we can be afraid that they'll judge us, they may not like us, they may exclude us, they may punish us with some form of consequence because we're not conforming to what they want. And we might hurt our reputation, we might hurt our status, we may compromise our standing not only with that person but in our social group if we are really ourselves. Something that commonly is said about this in the form of advice is don't worry about what other people think. Don't think so much about what other people will think. This is difficult. It's two points on that. One is to disregard what other people think altogether is unwise. Two, it's probably impossible. I'll start with why it might be impossible. We are social creatures. We evolved in small social groups. Sometimes not smaller than they are now. But we had to know a lot in order to function in those groups. There's actually a theory called the social brain hypothesis, and that is an explanation for why human beings have such large brains relative to our bodies compared to other animals. And that is because our evolution demanded it, because our adaptation was so socially dependent. We had to be able to figure out how to manage and navigate in a social world. It's been found, and some may dispute this, but that human beings have a more well-developed what's called theory of mind than other animals. And that means that we have the ability to think in more complex ways about other people's thoughts and feelings, their intentions, their motivations, and in general, but also towards us. So our brains evolved and are large, in part, the theory goes, because they do that, because they need to do that. So we do that. We think a lot about what other people think. And it turns out to be not only our hardwiring, which makes it impossible probably to not think that way, but it also makes it unwise to not think about what other people think. We do have an impact on people. Our impact on other people will bounce back on us. Unless we've achieved the state of narcissistic psychopath, we're going to be worried about what other people think and feel. And if we're not, we may not be welcome anywhere except perhaps a prison. Once upon a time in our evolution, to fall out of favor with a group in a serious way could mean exile or banishment from the tribe, which almost meant certain death. And while we don't have memories based on our ancestors' lives, our brains are equipped to deliver that fear. So the unreasonable or irrational fear that we sometimes have about the catastrophic consequences of not being liked by others, I believe, it's my little theory, that it could be connected to that. That we believe that if we're not liked, we could die. I share this just to be clear about the challenge, what's actually in front of us when we seriously consider being in the world as ourselves without having to compromise and conform at every turn to the expectations of others and to not have to please others. For some of us, it can be a very daunting challenge. So if you have found it or are finding it difficult to fully embody your authentic self in all social situations, I'd say don't be too hard on yourself. Acknowledge that this is not an easy thing. We have the challenge of knowing ourselves, and the only tools we have for that are tools that are given to us biologically and culturally and through our families. Our language, our ideas, our values, they're coming from outside. That's what we have to work with. Then we have the expectations and the pressures of the social world around us to conform. So it's a lot. But I'd say let's not give up on it. It's not impossible. We can know ourselves to some degree, and we can authentically express that in the world. The next challenge, though, is what we do when there's a reaction, when there's a complaint. How do we manage that? What do we do about it? I want to first identify two ways that I don't think are going to be very effective. One is to collapse and to buckle and to just immediately turn on a dime and see if you can't do what the person's asking or stop doing what they don't want and please them and make things better so that nobody's uncomfortable, so nobody's out of sorts. Basically give in and apologize. The other is to dismiss a complaint out of hand and to take the attitude that you don't care what the other person thinks and you're not even going to entertain the idea. I think these are both recipes for not a very good outcome. What I suggest instead is that we learn how to listen to a complaint. When we are ourselves and it rubs somebody the wrong way and they express that, can we listen to it? And so I encourage, let's listen. Let's listen to what people say when we are ourselves and think about it. Do they have a point? Have we caused them harm or pain or discomfort in some way that we didn't intend and we don't want to? Have we violated any of our own values or principles that we want to live by? Were we obligated to them in some way by a contract that we agreed to or by law, So evaluate the merit of the complaint and then decide if it has merit and whether you do want to make an adjustment or a correction or even apologize. And be sure that you're also considering your own needs and your own priorities, and that you're not simply prioritizing the other person's needs over your own. It may be that you have the value of not being selfish and to be kind and generous with people, and that's a noble value. I hold that myself. However, I think that value needs to be balanced with another value, which is the value of taking care of yourself and furthering your own aims and goals. If we don't have that balancing value, we're likely to be taken advantage of in some serious ways, and over time deplete ourselves and compromise ourselves and enslave ourselves to other people's needs and demands. So, yes, evaluate the complaint in these terms and decide whether or not it has merit. Basically, take the attitude not only of expecting a complaint to come. It won't always, but if you're consistently being yourself, inevitably there will be a complaint. So the attitude is to expect it, but also welcome it. Welcome it. You want to know. You want to know. Hopefully you want to know how you're impacting others and the world, and want to be able to take that information and do something with it. And that does not compromise you. It doesn't mean you're not being yourself. It just means that yourself is not some isolated thing all on its own. We're all in interpersonal relations. We're all in a social context constantly. And our self includes that. And we want to know about it. So, yes, turn the volume down on the voices that are dissenting from you being yourself, so that you're not overly concerned with them and allowing them to compromise you. But don't turn that station off, and welcome it, because you want to be able to continue to be yourself in relation to others. Some may, I think, naively imagine that when one is oneself, there's something free, carefree, liberating, empowering about it. It may be the last word, empowering, has something to do with it, but I don't know that it's carefree and easy. It's a harrowing path. There are dangers. There are obstacles. There are challenges. And sometimes there's a price to pay. Sometimes we do have to pay a price for being ourselves. Somebody may not like us. Some may take us off their Facebook friends list as a minor consequence. We might lose our job. We might lose our marriage. There can be prices to pay for being ourselves. My belief is that if we're wise about it, and we're not simply being reckless in being ourselves, that it's well worth the cost. And if we compare that loss, that cost of having been ourselves, to the cost of chronically compromising ourselves and constantly subordinating ourselves to other people's demands, that the cost is much less than that. Another thing I think is important to acknowledge and realize about being ourselves is that it's not just about all the things we're clear about, all the decisions we made about the principles and the values that we have, or all the clear goals that we have, or exactly how we feel about things. Knowing ourselves isn't just about all the certainty that we have, although it includes that. It includes our uncertainties, our unfinished parts, the things that we're confused about, the things we feel vulnerable or afraid about, our shadowy parts. That's also ourselves. And if we believe that being committed to being ourselves means revealing these things at all times to all people, I believe that's a bit naive. There are some people who may not be worthy to know that about you. There are people perhaps who cannot be trusted to be kind. If you're fortunate enough to have people in your life who can accept you with all of your parts, then I think that's a great opportunity to be ourselves and to not hide that, to not put on a disguise for people who could or might be trusted. We can take some risks that being ourselves doesn't just mean all of our strong, clear parts. It means all of our parts. Indiscriminately revealing our souls to just anybody for the sake of being ourselves may actually be stupid and unwise. Being too afraid to do that with people who can be trusted could be a great loss. Well, as with all of my videos, there's always more to say, but I think this is a good place to stop. Perhaps I've said enough. I invite you to carry on the path of knowing yourself and to rouse your courage to be yourself and to expect complaints and to be prepared for them, to be able to handle them and to let them not only represent a price that you may have to pay, but the external feedback that will help you even more fully be yourself. So good luck on that journey. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of this video. I appreciate it. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. If you know somebody else who might like this video, please share it with them. Leave me a comment. If you have any thoughts or experiences that you'd like to share, that'd be great. I will, as usual, write a brief synopsis of the video and provide a link for it below. Also below, you will find links to mugs, t-shirts, tote bags with the slogan, "Be yourself, expect complaints." Links for that below. Until next time, be well, be yourself, expect complaints. Bye.